Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Always fun to be back.
So today we're going to tackle something that
Yeah.
I think a lot of people listening can probably relate to.
Hmm?
Those moments
Mm.
when you are put on the spot, like completely unexpectedly,
Oh, absolutely.
and expected to be witty, insightful, compelling, all while your brain's basically doing the deer in the headlights routine.
Yeah, that feeling of like, oh,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like a blank slate,
And it can really throw even
Even the most seasoned communicator, I think, off their game a little bit.
totally. And for some people, it's not even just like a mild, oh no feeling.
Oh,
It's full-blown panic.
Yeah.
Which is why we're diving into some excerpts today from Matt Abraham's book, Think Faster, Talk Smarter.
A classic.
Yes, exactly. That you, our dear listeners, sent our way. And the goal today is to really
Yeah.
take all the wisdom, all the research that's in this book,
Yeah.
and kind of distill it down into the stuff that you actually need to not only survive these situations,
Yeah.
but actually kind of rock them.
Ambitious, but definitely possible.
Yes. And it all starts with, Abrams talks about that this sucks feeling,
Right.
which I think we all know very intimately.
Like we've all been there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So what is actually happening in our brains and bodies when we have this sucks feeling?
So it really goes back to, cave person days, right?
Yeah.
You've got a sudden threat and you're either going to fight or flee.
Right.
And it's the same primal response that gets triggered even now, in these modern situations.
Right.
So what happens is your body's pumping out all this adrenaline,
Right.
and that leads to dry mouth, the racing heart, sweaty palms, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, it's evolution, but not very helpful
Not really helpful.
when you're just trying to answer a question in a meeting.
Not super helpful.
So it's not just in our heads. It's like a full-on,
Physiological response.
yes, physiological response.
Okay.
But the book also dives into the psychology behind this and specifically how, past experiences
Right.
can kind of create
Just the loop of...
yeah, almost like
This cycle. Yeah, this vicious cycle.
this vicious cycle of dread. So Abrahams tells a story about a librarian named Irma
Right.
who basically chose her entire career path to avoid speaking situations
Wow.
because of
And
one
bad experience.
bad
It's
experience
powerful.
in high school
Mm-hmm.
where her teacher kind of
Humiliated her.
yeah, really embarrassed
Mhm,
her
mhm.
after she asked a question. And that
Shaped her whole life.
that literally shaped her life. It makes you think, how many Irmas are out there?
So many Irmas, yeah.
Who are just avoiding all these
All these opportunities.
opportunities, yes, because of
Yeah.
one
One bad experience.
bad experience. So how do we break this cycle? Is it all about deep therapy?
I mean, therapy's great, but thankfully Abrahams gives us some tools that are a little bit faster than that.
Okay.
He really emphasizes, mindset shifts, not so much like tricks or, gimmicks, but like foundational changes in how you even view these types of situations.
Okay, let's unpack some of these because mindset sounds very
Yeah, it can sound kind of vague.
vague. What does that actually mean?
Right. So one shift is moving from what's called a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
Okay.
And this builds on the work of Carol Dweck, who's done a lot of research in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And basically a fixed mindset is this idea that you're either born a good speaker or you're not, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Whereas a growth mindset says, no, these are skills that are developed.
So instead of I'm bad at this, it's I'm getting better at this.
Exactly.
Which is a very subtle
Exactly.
but powerful difference, I think.
It really is.
Yeah. And it totally impacts how you approach, preparing for these things, how you handle setbacks.
Absolutely. And another really crucial shift is moving from you-focused to audience-focused.
So instead of thinking everyone's judging me, it's more like, how can I connect with these people?
Exactly. So well put.
Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, you're shifting from feeling threatened to seeing an opportunity.
Right.
It's not about you performing, it's about you having a conversation.
Right.
And Abrahams also pulls from the world of improv with this principle called yes and.
Oh, interesting.
Have you ever done any improv?
I took a class once. It was a very humbling experience.
I bet.
But it really I don't know, it reminded me that going with the flow is a lot more fun than trying to control everything.
And that is really the heart of yes and.
Yeah.
It's about building on what's said, embracing those unexpected turns instead of shutting it down with a yes but or a no,
Right, right.
It's like this collaboration, and it actually reduces your anxiety because takes the pressure off being right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's like that imaginary gift game that Abraham's described.
Oh, yeah.
Where you just keep adding to the absurdity of the gift. You're not
Okay.
worried about the best gift. You're just playing along.
You're just playing along.
Yeah.
And that ties into kind of this idea of seeing challenges as opportunities.
Yes.
And he tells this story about Fred Dust, who's a consultant, who was advising the Greek government.
High stakes.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And he basically sensed all this anxiety in the room
Yeah.
and just completely changed his prepared remarks, like on the fly.
Wow.
Like just to respond to what was actually happening in the room, not what he had planned.
That's like high stakes improv.
It is, which really shows how important it is to be present and really listening to the people you're with.
Yes.
Not just reciting your mental script.
Not just going through the motion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that leads to what Abrahams calls the next play mentality,
I love this one.
which is something he highlights as being super crucial for dealing with mistakes.
Yeah.
So it's a sports analogy. You mess up, you don't dwell on it.
Right.
You focus on what you can do next.
It's so powerful.
Oh, the mental reset button. I need that.
We all need that, you know. He gives the example of Tai Kim, who is this youth sports coach who applies this to his work, too. And it makes so much sense because if you think about it, dwelling on your errors really just amplifies the anxiety.
It does.
You know, Abrahams also shares his own personal story
Oh, yeah.
about handling layoffs and how he actually reframed it as an opportunity for his employees.
Wow.
Yeah, so powerful.
That's a next level.
Next level thinking.
Yeah, next level reframing. Seems like a theme here is about controlling what you can control and letting go of the rest.
Absolutely.
But that sounds very, I don't know, Zen master.
Right.
Yeah.
Like very enlightened.
Yes. What about for us mere mortals who freeze up in the moment? Are there like practical things that we can do?
Yes, there are. Well, I mean, Zen master might be a bit of a stretch.
Okay.
But Abrahams does offer some techniques that are a little bit more, grounded.
Okay.
And one thing he reminds us is that the goal isn't to eliminate anxiety altogether, because that's just not realistic.
Yeah, like trying to be completely calm when your boss asks you a question that you did not prepare for.
Right.
That just seems like a recipe for more pressure.
Exactly. So it's about managing it, right? And so he offers some things like, cooling your hands, which sounds a little bit odd.
Yeah.
But it actually taps into how our hands can regulate our body temperature.
Oh, very.
And then there's also slowing down your speech, using pauses strategically, and syncing your breathing.
Right.
All things we can control even when our thoughts are racing.
They are, yeah. It's funny how we forget that we have a body
Yes.
when we get like flustered.
Totally.
Now, Abrahams also talks about rationalization, right? Like asking yourself, what's the worst that could happen? Which can really put things into perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
But beyond the physical, like the stuff happening in our body, he also dives into how our thinking itself can sabotage us.
Oh, absolutely.
And he talks about these things called mental shortcuts.
Right, which are also known as heuristics.
Heuristics, okay.
Yeah, and they can be really helpful in our everyday life, but they can really limit us when it comes to spontaneous speaking.
Okay, explain that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because heuristics sounds very academic, so how does that actually play out when we're trying to think on our feet?
So think of them as like pre-programmed responses.
Oh, okay.
Right? They save us mental energy, but they also make us predictable.
I see, yeah.
And Abrahams, being a teacher, tells this funny story about how he used a packet of Parmesan cheese to connect with a disruptive student. And it was this moment that really broke him out of his usual teacher mode heuristics.
Interesting.
Yeah, it led to this genuine connection with this student.
So it's almost like he hacked his own mental shortcut in that moment.
Exactly.
To be more present in the situation.
Yes, and it takes self-awareness to do that.
Yeah, for sure. But then there's also, self-judgment, that inner critic that's constantly whispering, you're not good enough. That just kills spontaneity, I feel like.
Oh, absolutely. Mine has a whole stand-up routine
Oh my gosh.
about all my flaws.
So the book actually has this exercise called Shout the Wrong Name.
Yeah.
Where you basically just intentionally mislabel things.
I love that.
Which sounds silly, but it forces you to loosen up.
Yeah.
To kind of detach from needing to be right all the time.
It takes the pressure off.
Yes, exactly. Now, the book also makes this case for structure in spontaneous speaking,
Right.
which seems kind of contradictory, right?
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive.
Yes.
But what Abrahams argues is that having some sort of structure,
Well,
even if it's internal, can actually help with things like attention, memory, and confidence.
so it's not about memorizing a speech, but
Yeah.
it's like having these frameworks to fall back on.
Exactly. It's like a mental scaffolding.
Okay, I like that.
So one he explores is what now what,
Okay,
which sounds really simple,
it does.
but it's actually so versatile.
Okay, break that down a little bit for us. How does that actually work in a practical sense?
So imagine you're at like a networking event
Right.
and someone asks you, what do you do?
Okay.
So the what is simply stating what you do. So what is giving some context, like why does it matter? What's interesting about it?
Oh.
And then now what could be a question back to them.
Oh, interesting.
Right. Connecting it to their world.
So it's not just you rambling about yourself,
Right.
but it's creating that back and forth.
It's creating flow. Yeah.
And this can be internal too, right?
Absolutely.
Like if you get asked an unexpected question in a meeting,
Mm-hmm.
the what is understanding the question. The so what is like analyzing why it's relevant.
Yes.
And then the now what is like your concise response, even if it's, I need to think about that further.
Right, which is totally fine.
Right, it's totally
Gives you a process to follow.
Okay, that's great.
And it really helps to avoid that deer in the headlights feeling.
Right. Now, the book also talks a lot about focus,
Mm-hmm.
which seems, very intuitive.
Right.
But why is it so crucial specifically for spontaneous speaking?
Because in those moments, you have very limited time and attention to capture, right?
Right.
And so Abrahams breaks focus down into 4 dimensions.
Okay, hit me with them.
All right. So
Yeah.
first you have your goal. What is the purpose of what you're saying?
Okay.
Then you have your audience. Who are you speaking to? What matters to them?
Mhm.
That ties into the next dimension, which is accessibility. Is your language clear?
Right.
And finally, concision. Are you getting to the point?
Okay, so it's like that saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there,
Yes,
but applied to speaking.
absolutely.
Okay, so you need to know what your point is.
Yeah, and he really emphasizes that you should consider these 4 dimensions before a situation even arises.
So it's almost like a pre-flight checklist for your brain.
Exactly.
Right, so you're not figuring it out mid-flight when the pressure's on.
I love that analogy.
And Abrahams uses some really great examples in the book. Right?
Oh, yes.
Like, give us the good stuff.
So there's the Steve Jobs line that he used when he was introducing the iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket.
Oh, yeah, that's iconic.
Right.
Yeah,
Brilliant example of concision and understanding what your audience cares about.
exactly. And it stuck with people because
Yeah.
it was clear, it was benefit-focused.
It was memorable.
It was memorable, yeah.
And then he also talks about Hans Rosling's shortest TED Talk, where he used props
Okay.
to explain these complex ideas about global inequality in under a minute.
Wow.
Talk about efficient communication.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And then the development of Google's mission statement. So simple, so clear, so memorable.
And that actually took a lot of iteration and back and forth, right?
Absolutely.
To get to that
So even spontaneous.
seemingly spontaneous
Yes.
can benefit from that preparation.
From that careful thought beforehand.
But let's be real, not every speaking situation allows for that kind of prep time.
Right.
So what about those truly, like, your blindsided moments?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because while the book offers a lot of really helpful tools for those specific scenarios, like job interviews
Right.
or giving feedback, it's really about cultivating that general sense of readiness.
Right, because you can't anticipate every single question your boss is going to ask you in a meeting.
Exactly. So how do you become more ready for anything?
Okay, yeah, how do you do that?
It goes back to some of those mindset shifts that we talked about earlier.
You mean like not freaking out when the unexpected happens?
Yeah.
Easier said than done?
Oh, absolutely. But remember that shift from yes, but to yes, and.
Right.
That's not just for improv.
Yeah.
It's a life skill.
So instead of resisting the unexpected, you just kind of roll with it.
You say yes to the moment and you build on it.
Okay.
Rather than trying to shut it down.
Okay.
That next play mentality also really applies here.
Right.
You know, you let go of any mistakes. You focus on what you can do next, and it takes the pressure off needing to be perfect.
It's like giving yourself permission to just be human,
Exactly.
which is hard, especially when you feel like you're in the spotlight.
Yeah. And that's where that audience-focused mindset can really come in handy.
Right.
You shift your focus from your own anxiety to connecting with those people in front of you.
So it's not about you in that moment.
Right.
It's about them.
Exactly.
Okay.
What do they need? How can you best serve them?
It takes you out of your own head, which is probably a good thing in those situations.
Usually, yes.
But are there any other, like, practical things that we can do to kind of cultivate that general sense of ready for anything?
Well, Abraham suggests incorporating little spontaneous speaking drills into your everyday life.
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
Like, challenge yourself to strike up a conversation with a stranger.
Oh, okay.
Or, summarize a news article in 60 seconds.
Oh, interesting.
Just little things that keep you on your toes.
So it's like building a muscle.
Exactly. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
What about things like joining Toastmasters or taking an improv class?
Those are fantastic options if you want to practice in a more structured environment.
Yeah?
They give you a safe space to experiment and get feedback.
Right, right. Now, speaking of specific situations, the book also dives into small talk.
Oh, yes.
Any tips for making that less painful?
Because I think most of us would rather just hide in the bathroom sometimes. I'm right there with you.
Okay, but Abraham's actually reframes small talk as an opportunity,
Yes.
not a chore.
It's a chance to connect with another human being.
Okay, I'm willing to hear you out on this one.
Okay.
How do we actually make it enjoyable, or at least bearable?
Well, it starts with being genuinely curious.
Okay,
Make the conversation about the other person,
right.
not yourself.
Don't just talk about yourself.
Ask open-ended questions.
Right.
Listen actively.
Mm-hmm.
Resist the urge to kind of swipe left too soon.
I like that. Yeah.
You might be surprised at who you connect with.
So it's about approaching it as a mini conversation, not just an obligatory, hi, how are you?
Exactly. And he even offers some specific structures for navigating those awkward moments, like initiating a conversation or exiting a conversation gracefully.
Well, give us an example of that.
So instead of the classic, what do you do at a networking event?
Right.
You could try something like, have you ever been to an event like this before?
Oh, that's much more interesting.
It's more engaging and inviting.
Yeah, I like that.
Now, another situation that can be tough is giving feedback.
Ooh, yeah.
But again, it's about reframing.
Right.
So Abrahams suggests thinking of feedback as an invitation to collaborate on problem solving,
Interesting.
not a one-way lecture.
Okay, yeah.
And he offers this really helpful structure called the 4 I's of feedback.
Okay, I like that.
So we've got information, impact,
Yeah.
invitation, and implications.
Okay, break those down for us.
Sure. So information is about being specific and objective about the behavior. Impact is explaining the effect of that behavior, whether it's on you, on others, on the team.
Got it.
Invitation is where you collaboratively seek solutions.
Oh, okay.
And then implications are outlining the potential consequences of addressing or not addressing the issue.
So it's all about being clear
Yeah,
and about working together.
exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
And of course, how you deliver feedback is just as important as what you say.
Right, because information can feel very different depending on how it's said.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Abrahams really emphasizes being supportive and respectful.
Okay.
Choose a private setting.
Right.
Use a calm tone.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on the behavior, not the person.
Right.
And acknowledge their perspective.
Okay.
And it's also really important to end on a positive note.
Right.
Focus on their potential for growth.
It's like that balance of honesty and encouragement.
Exactly.
But sometimes, even with the best of intentions, we mess up.
Right.
Which brings us to apologies.
Oh, yeah, those can be tricky.
They can be very awkward and uncomfortable.
They can.
So Abrahams actually offers a framework he calls the AAA approach.
Okay, I like it.
Tell me more about that.
Okay, so the 3 A's are acknowledge, accept, and amend.
Because a bad apology can sometimes be worse than no apology at all, right?
100%.
So what do those A's actually mean?
Okay, acknowledge means clearly stating what you did wrong.
Got it.
Be specific, no vagueness.
Okay.
Accept is taking responsibility and expressing genuine remorse.
Mm-hmm.
And then amend is outlining how you'll make things right or prevent it from happening again.
So it's not just saying, I'm sorry, it's about taking action.
Exactly. And just like with feedback, the delivery really matters.
Okay.
Eye contact,
Yeah.
sincere tone, no defensive body language.
Right.
And usually one heartfelt apology is enough.
Right.
Overdoing it can actually undermine your sincerity.
It can. Okay, let's talk about something truly terrifying. Okay. Impromptu presentations.
Okay.
So those moments when you're suddenly asked to speak up in front of a crowd. Any advice for those situations?
Well, first of all, take a deep breath.
Okay, deep breaths.
Remember those mindset shifts. See it as an opportunity, not a threat.
Right.
And then fall back on some of those familiar structures we talked about. Like, what now what, or problem solution benefit, to help organize your thoughts.
Okay.
Focus on a single key message and don't be afraid to embrace imperfection.
So it's about knowing that you have those tools.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't have to be perfect.
Exactly. Authenticity often resonates more than polished perfection.
Right. Which actually brings us to a key takeaway that weaves through everything we've discussed today. The power of practice.
Yes. So important.
We've touched on this throughout the episode,
Yeah.
but it's worth emphasizing again because it can feel daunting to practice something as unpredictable as spontaneous speaking.
It can, but it's not about rehearsing specific speeches.
Right.
It's about building that mental agility and that confidence to handle any situation.
So how do we do that?
You create practice moments throughout your day. Right. Summarize a news article, give an impromptu presentation to a friend, even just practice introducing yourself to someone new.
Just little things to get out of your comfort zone.
Exactly. Flex those speaking muscles.
And what about those spontaneous speaking drills that we talked about earlier?
Those are great too. They can really help you hone those skills and build that ready for anything mindset.
Amazing. Wow, we covered so much ground today. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for approaching spontaneous speaking.
I'm so glad to hear that. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
The more you practice, the more confident and comfortable you'll become.
Yes.
Embrace the unexpected, have fun with it, and who knows, you might even start looking forward to those put-on-the-spot moments.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a great goal to strive for. A
Absolutely.
huge thank you to Matt Abrahams for this incredibly insightful book.
Yes, thank you.
And to you, dear listener, for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Remember, the power to think faster, talk smarter is within each and every one of you.
It is.
Keep practicing, keep experimenting, and keep those conversations flowing.
Until next time.
Bye, everyone.